So, as we wrap up our discussion of the Middle Colonies, the final piece that I want to focus on is, of course, that identity, like we've done with the Southern and the New England colonies, that identity that formed in the Middle Colonies. What was the culture and the values that developed as a whole with those living within these Middle Colonies? The Middle Colonies can definitely be considered a combination of characteristics between the South and the New England colonies. Economically, you found both agriculture, like you would in the South, and industry, like you would in the North, right? They had large amounts of staple crops, things like wheat, barley, and oats, right? They grew a lot of grains in the Middle Colonies. So there was a lot of agriculture. But they also had industries such as ironworking and forestry, because they also had access to a large amounts of forestry and other types of minerals. So they also had the development of industries. So they had a little bit of both. There was a large immigrant population, right? Because of the tradition of tolerance that we found throughout the Middle Colonies, because of the diverse populations that were already living within the Middle Colonies, some of them already being Dutch colonies previously, we see a lot more of a diverse population in the Middle Colonies than we see in the South or the New England colonies. So it is the home to the most diverse populations within the British 13. Trade was made easier because the Middle Colonies had access to the cities of Philadelphia and New York City, which were at that time the largest ports in the colonies, and they really were the centers of shipping. Women in the Middle Colonies, were also a little bit different. They had different abilities and different rights than in other places. Women were able to run farms. They had their own businesses, such as grocery stores and bakeries and drugstores. They could practice medicine. They could work as nurses and midwives, right? Midwives are those who specialize in delivering babies. And most colonial women at that time mostly worked at home, right? Taking care of the household and children. So in the Middle Colonies, this idea that women were able to kind of be part of the industry and be part of businesses and make a living and have careers was a little unheard of in comparison to the other colonies. The colonies used a combination of assemblies, town meetings, and also the royal government in order to make the laws, and that's how they governed themselves. Slavery in the Middle Colonies, they did exist. You had slaves. They worked in the cities and on farms. You also had some slaves who were able to make money when slaveholders would allow them to work in the cities as longshoremen or as shipbuilders, right? They would receive a wage. And so slaveholders would get a portion of that wage, and then the slaves would keep the rest. So they were able to make a little bit of money. And in rare cases, those slaves that were able to save enough over time would actually save enough to be able to purchase their own freedom, which was not something that you would see a lot of in the Southern colonies and not a lot of in the New England colonies because they didn't really have a large amount of slaves in the first place. So this was the identity or the culture that developed throughout the Middle Colonies as a whole, some kind of general practices and general values and ideas that we saw throughout the Middle Colonies. And now that we've seen all three regions, right, now you are able to kind of compare the different types of cultures and values that developed between the South, the Middle, and New England, and how kind of they all became their own unique regions and unique groups within these British colonies.